Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got a couple things to discuss, including recaps from all the games over the weekend, some signings to talk about, a couple of waiver updates, some injury news, and some trade rumors. Rumors involving the Vancouver Canucks, Ottawa Senators, Florida Panthers, and Seattle Kraken. We'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Now, before I start, remember to like this video and subscribe down below. We're so close to 200 subscribers. You guys have been so supportive. I would never be able to do this without you, so thank you for all of your support, and just don't forget to remember to subscribe. As usual, I'm going to kick things off by discussing a couple of game recaps from around the NHL. So, there was a lot of games over the past couple of days. 14 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday, and 5 games on Monday. So with the huge amount of games that have been happening over the past couple of days, I'm going to quickly go through these. Just quick rundowns of all the games that have happened, what the scores were, who over some of the more significant guys who got on the score sheet. So I'm going to go through all those right now. So starting Saturday morning, we had a early game between the Senators and the Flyers. Ottawa wound up winning that game 5-2. Jacob Chychrun had a 3-point night, 2 goals and an assist. Brady Tkachuk also scored twice. Jake Sanderson had a goal and an assist. Claude Giroux and Vladimir Tarasenko both had a couple of assists. It was a really dominant performance from the Ottawa Senators. Konechny continued his hot start to the season by scoring a goal and an assist. Those were the scores for that game, so it was a really good game from Ottawa. Definitely, Ottawa, I thought we were going to be getting this offseason, so that was a really good start for the Sens. Flyers, like I thought, probably going to start being mediocre this year, so not too surprised there. The Jets would then face off against the Florida Panthers. Jets would wind up winning 6-4, avoiding a comeback attempt from the Panthers. Connor had 2 goals and an assist. Appleton and Shifley both had a goal assist. Morrissey had a couple of assists. Rodriguez in Florida had a point on all 4 Florida goals for his first points as a member of the Panthers. So that was really good for him. 2 goals, 2 assists. Sam Reiner had a goal assist. Barkov and Tkachuk had 2 assists in the loss. For a second straight game, Florida loses. Winnipeg gets their first win of the season, so good to see Winnipeg get their first win of the season. Florida just could not keep the puck out of their net, so really bad news for them. Boston Bruins were able to overcome a slow start to beat the Nashville Predators 3-2. James Van Riemsdyk scored his first 2 goals as a member of the Boston Bruins. David Pastrnak had a penalty shot goal plus an assist in the game, while Charlie McAvoy had 2 assists. And then Colton Sissons, who got the game winner against the Seattle Kraken, scored both goals for the Nashville Predators against the Bruins. So not good for the Preds. They dropped to 1-2-0 in the season. Really bad start for them. After beating the Hawks, the Bruins now have improved to 2-0. So really good start there for the Bruins against 2 lower-end teams. The Canadiens would then face off against the Blackhawks, 2 teams who shouldn't do overly well this year, and the Habs were able to come on top 3-2. Sean Monahan had a goal and an assist, first goal of the season. Tanner Pearson has first goal as a member of the Canadiens, so solid thing to see there. While Cole Caulfield got his second of the year, so good to see that. Meanwhile, the Hawks had 2 goals from Tyler Johnson that made it a little bit closer towards the end of the game. But it ended up being a 3-2 Canadiens lead, which was good news for the Canadiens there. The win improves them to 1-0-1 to start the year, while the Hawks dropped down to 1-2-0 to start the year. So some really good things there. The Flames would go up 1-0, but then 3 quick goals at the beginning of the third period would lead the charge for the Penguins to win 5-2 over the Flames on Saturday. For the Penguins, Gensel had 3 points, including a goal and 2 assists. Rust had 2 goals. Both Riley Smith and Evgeny Malkin had a goal and an assist. Letang had a couple of assists. Well, Jonathan Huberdeau and this goal here for Matthew Coronado, his first in the NHL, were the 2 goal scorers for the Calgary Flames. The Flames would fall 5-2 to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So really bad loss for the Flames there. The Red Wings would beat the Tampa Bay Lightning also on Saturday, 6-4. The Red Wings would get a 3-point night from Alex DeBrincat, 2 goals and an assist. Newcomer JT Compher, as well as Moritz Seider, would both get a goal assist. Compher's first points with the team. And both Sprong and Raymond would also score for the Red Wings. Sprong, for the second straight game, he was able to score a goal. So really good stuff there from Detroit. For the Tampa Bay Lightning, Stamkos had a 3-point night, as did Hedman. Stamkos 2 goals and an assist. Hedman a goal and 2 assists. Hagel added a goal and an assist, while Kucherov had a couple of assists. So really good high-scoring affair, but just like before, The Tampa's going to have trouble keeping the puck out of the net, and Detroit was able to capitalize on it, so good for Detroit to improve to 1-1-0 and drop Tampa to 1-1-0. Columbus Blue Jackets were able to get a dominant 5-3 victory over the New York Rangers. Really good win there. Jenner, the captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets, had a natural hat trick to go from being down 1-0 to the Rangers to being up 3-1, so it was a fantastic game from Boone Jenner. Both Ivan Provorov and Johnny Gaudreau would have 2 assists for Jackets. Provorov's first was the team. We also had this goal here from rookie David Jiricek, which wound up being the game winner. To give the Jackets a 4-1 lead, it was Jiricek's first NHL goal in his first game of the season, being called up after the injury to Werenski. So really good things there from Jiricek. So good to see him get his first NHL goal. Justin Danforth would also score for the Jackets. Well, for the Rangers, there was a couple of assists from Adam Fox. Eric Gustafsson had a goal and assist in the game, his first as a member of the New York Rangers. And then Chris Kreider would score again in this game, as well as Will Cooley, who scored his first career NHL goal. So some good things all around, but the Jackals were able to come out with the 5-3 victory over the New York Rangers. The Toronto Maple Leafs were able to see a huge dominant performance, a big win over the Minnesota Wild, 7-4. This was another game dominated by Austin Matthews, who for the second consecutive game had a hat trick. Multiple back-to-back hat tricks from Matthews. Absolutely fantastic from him to start the season. On top of him having a hat trick, Nylander had 3 points, 2 goals and an assist. Yarncrook had a goal assist. Marner, Tavares, and Riley all had 2 assists in the win, while the Wild scored goals from Ryan Duhaime, Matt Boldy, Ryan Hartman, and Marco Rossi. We talked about this when we were recapping the first 2 games. Rossi's first goal was against the Florida Panthers, but it was called off. It never counted. This one did. Rossi finally gets his first goal. That's absolutely fantastic news, but it wasn't a losing effort. Wild will lose 7-4 to the Leafs, and it's just an absolute great game from Austin Matthews. Then you had the Islanders take on the Sabres. The Sabres were to lose 3-2 in regulation. A late goal from the Islanders were able to seal the deal for the win. The Islanders, Nelson had a goal and an assist in this game, and Kyle Palmieri and Casey Zizekas had the other 2 goals. Meanwhile, Casey Milstead had a goal and assist in this game, and Zach Benson, the young 2023 13th overall pick, had 2 assists for his first 2 career NHL points. Very fantastic news there for Buffalo, but it wasn't a loss. For the Sabres, they dropped to 0-2-0. The Islanders won their first game of the season, improving to 1-0-0. So really good stuff there. The Blues and Kraken would be in a low-scoring affair in which the Blues would win 2-1 in a shootout. Schwartz scored the lone goal for the Seattle Kraken in the loss, while Cairo would score in regulation, and Thomas would be the lone scorer in the shootout to give the Blues a 2-1 shootout victory and drop the Kraken to their 3rd straight loss of the season, while the Blues improved to 1-0-1. For the Golden Knights, they were taking on the Anaheim Ducks, and they were able to win 4-1. Chandler Stevenson had a goal and 2 assists. Eichel and Theodore both were able to tally a goal and assist for Jonas Romberg, who was called up and replaced for injured Will Carey a couple of games ago, was able to score his first goal of the season. Good news there. And then McTavish was the lone scorer for the Ducks in their opener. Ducks fell to 0-1-0, while the Knights improved to 3-0-0 to start the year. Really good start there from the Golden Knights. For the Sharks and the Avalanche were able to come from behind to take a 2-1 shootout victory. Blackwood was fantastic, making 51 saves in his Sharks debut. Thomas Bordeleau would score his first career NHL goal for the Sharks, so that's fantastic news there. Cale Makar scored the very late game-tying goal to send that one to overtime, and then Mikko Rantanen would score a lone shootout goal to give the Avalanche the win. So really good night there. The Canucks, for the 2nd straight game, were able to oust the Edmonton Oilers 4-3. So that was a huge win for the Canucks. Höglander had a goal and assist. Pettersson had a couple assists in that game. While Kuzmenko, Stanichka, and this game winner here from Sam Lafferty would give the Canucks the 4 goals that they needed to beat the Edmonton Oilers. While Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had a goal and 2 assists, and both Draisaitl and McDavid had a goal and assist in the loss for the Oilers. So not really good news there, but it was a lot closer for the Oilers, so a really good game there. And the last game on Saturday night we had was that the Carolina Hurricanes beat the LA Kings 6-5 in a shootout, overcoming them, blowing a 3-0 and 5-2 lead. Aho had a goal and an assist in this game, while Teravainen, Kotkaniemi, Burns, and Lemieux versus the Carolina Hurricane were the regulation goal scorers for Carolina, while Aho, Nashis, and Martinook scored in the shootout. And then for the Kings, Kopitar had a couple of goals. Fiala tallied 3 assists. And then the Kings also got scoring from Doughty, Moore, and Gavrikov, as well as Dubois, Moore in a shootout. but it was not enough to beat the Canes. So Carolina had a really good game, and they were able to improve to 2-0, dropping the Kings to 0-1. So really good stuff there from Hurricanes. Then we had a couple of games on Sunday. Two of them, Sens and Bolts in the second half of a back-to-back, Canes and Ducks in the second half of a back-to-back. For the Sens and Bolts, Sens were able to win 5-2. Brady Tkachuk, for the second straight game, had 2 goals. He also had an assist. Tarasenko had a goal and assist, including his first goal as a member of the Senators, as well as Joseph and Stützle scoring for the Sens. While Tanner Jeannot had a goal and assist for the Bolts, and Sorelli was the other goal scorer for the Bolts. So once again, Bolts can't seem to keep the puck out of their net. Sens were able to make advantage of it. Sens win, improving to 2-1, dropping the Bolts to 1-2, so it's very good news for Ottawa. In the other game, the Anaheim Ducks were able to oust the Carolina Hurricanes 6-3. Frank Vatrano had himself a really good game, putting up a hat trick. On top of that, Cam Fowler had a goal and assist. Mason McTavish and Ryan Strome both had 2 assists. And then Sam Carrick scored for the Anaheim Ducks, as well as this goal here from Pavel Mintyukov, the young defenseman, only in his second NHL game, was able to score his first NHL goal. On that goal, young defenseman Jackson Lacombe, who's also playing in his first full NHL season, was able to get an assist on that. So good to see some of the Ducks' younger players get some points. So those contributed to the 6-3 victory for the Ducks. Meanwhile, Teravainen had a 2-goal game for the Carolina Hurricanes. Nacas was the other goal scorer for the Hurricanes. So a loss 6-3 in their opening game is not overly fantastic for the Canes. And then we had a couple of games from yesterday. The Detroit Red Wings were able to shut out the Columbus Blue Jackets 4-0. Huge win there. Reimer had a fantastic game in net. Detroit got goal scoring from Goss Despair, his first as member of the Red Wings, Kopp, Larkin, and Rasmussen to improve to 4-0. Huge win there for the Red Wings to improve to 2-1-0, dropping the Jackets to 1-2-0, so fantastic win there. The Panthers almost gave up an extremely big lead, but were able to hold on to win over the New Jersey Devils 4-3. For Florida, Sam Reinhart had a 2-goal game, while Matthew Tkachuk had 2 assists. And then, as you can see here, remember all clips are credited to Sportsnet, but this goal here from Niko Mikkola was a huge goal for the Florida Panthers. His first as a member of the Florida Panthers was another goal the Panthers scored, and then Verhaeghe also scored for Florida. And then for New Jersey, Holla and Brad both had a goal assist, and McLeod had a goal in the loss. So really bad stuff there, but Florida was able to get through and win the game. The New York Rangers were able to get back to another win, beating the Arizona Coyotes 2-1. Goals by Kreider and Trocheck for the Rangers, to a goal from Clayton Keller from the Coyotes led to the Rangers win, so really good stuff there. The Chicago Blackhawks were able to stun the Maple Leafs 4-1 to take their win and get back to 500 at 2-2-0, dropping the Leafs to 2-1-0. Anthony Hsu had 2 assists tonight. Perry scored his first with member of the Blackhawks, as well as Radish, Johnston, and Entwistle. Well, John Tavares will score the only goal for the Leafs. And then on top of that, you had the Caps beat the Flames in a shootout yesterday, 3-2. Matthew Phillips, former Flame, would score his first career NHL goal, as well as an assist. Connor McMichael scored in the regulation, while Evgeny Kuznetsov scored in the shootout. Then both Dubé and Ruzicka had a goal and assist, while Hanifin had 2 assists in the loss for the Calgary Flames. So a lot of really good games over the past couple of weeks. Now there are a couple of quick stats I wanted to tell you guys. I found out, I've been doing a little bit of research, and as a lot of you probably do know, there's a saying that you can't win the Stanley Cup or make the playoffs in October or November, but you can miss the playoffs or not win the Stanley Cup in October or November. You can guarantee you miss. And I wanted to see exactly how much stock that really had in a team. If a team had bad starts, do they wind up missing the playoffs? Is that possible? Well, I wanted to see exactly how bad of a start a team would have to try and basically missed the playoffs. I've looked at the last 5 seasons of full 82-game seasons. So I'm not including the COVID-shortened season, not including the COVID-postponed season. Those 2 I'm not counting. There were too much different stats there. But I'm just counting the last 2 seasons plus the 3 seasons before the COVID-shortened season. So the last 5 full 82-game seasons. So if you look back, 17 times the team started with 3 straight losses. Now it could be 3 straight regulation losses, 3 straight shootout losses, a mixture of them. But if they lost 3 straight times, 17 times that happened over those 5 years. And over those 5 years, of those 17 teams, only 3 of them were able to make the playoffs. That was back in 16-17 when the Ducks started 0-3-1 and the Flames started 0-2-1, and they both ended up making the playoffs. And then last year, when the Wild started 0-3-0, they were able to make the playoffs. Besides those 3 teams, everyone else who started the season losing 3 straight games wound up missing the playoffs. So that's not really good news for teams who have started out really badly this year. Now, for the most part, everyone's at least won 1 game by the 3-game mark so far this year. One team hasn't so far, and that is the Seattle Kraken. They started out 0-2-1, so that spells really bad news for Seattle. But there are 3 teams today who could wind up losing 3 straight games to start the season. That's the LA Kings, the Edmonton Oilers, and San Jose Sharks. Now, I'm not sure if all of them are going to fall to 0-3-0, and like I said, it's not a death sentence. There have been teams who have started with 3 straight losses to begin the season and made the playoffs, but it's extremely difficult. So look for the Oilers, the Kings, the Sharks today to try and win and avoid 3 straight losses to start the year. It's really hard to make the playoffs after starting 0-3-0. And if you look at it a little bit further, if you look at the first 10 games, once again, looking at these last 5 years of full 82-game seasons, if a team starts with a below 500 record, so 9 points or less, to start the season, that has happened 43 times in the past 5 full NHL seasons. Of those 43 times, only 8 teams wound up making the playoffs. That was the Kings and the Avalanche 2 years ago, who started with 9 points. That was the Blues and the Knights in 18-19, who started with 9 points. That was the Capitals in 17-18, who started with 9 points. And that was the Flames, the Leafs, who started with 9 points in 16-17, as well as the Preds, who started with 8 points in 16-17. So if you start below 500 record to begin the season, it's extremely difficult to get back to the playoffs. On top of that, if you go 1 point lower, and if you put the mark at starting the season with 8 points or lower, that's happened 28 times over those 5 years. Only one team, the Nashville Predators back in 16-17, has made the playoffs after starting the season with 8 points or less in their first 10 games. So starting with a below 500 record is extremely unlikely to get you into the playoffs. Starting with 8 points or less in their first 10 games is a death sentence. So just some quick stats here. I know this seemed really interesting to me to see that if you start with 3 losses, it's really hard to come back. And if you start with less than 500 record in the first 10 games of your season, it's really hard to come back from the playoffs. So I just thought that'd be a really interesting stat. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that, and which sort of teams do you think could start this season under 500 record this year? And if there was a team to start with an under 500 record this year and make the playoffs, which team do you think would be the most likely? Definitely, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. But that's all I'm going to talk about for that. We've got a couple of things to discuss. Not overly busy news period over the past couple of days. A couple of quick signings. Max Comtois, who went to a PTO with the Vegas Golden Knights, was released off of his PTO, signs an AHL contract with the Chicago Wolves. They're the independent AHL team who broke off from the Carolina Hurricanes. So Comtois is going to go there, help that team out. That's really good news. At least he's got somewhere to play. He does have an out clause in the contract, according to reports, that he could, if he signs a NHL contract, the team will release him. So that's really good news. Until he gets an NHL contract, he's going to remain with the Chicago Wolves in the AHL. So at least he's got somewhere to play. It's not the NHL. And if he does get an NHL contract, he'll be able to go there and leave the AHL club. So it'll be interesting to see, but at least Comtois got somewhere to play to start the year. Another signing that we have to talk about is Jonah Gadjevich, former Vancouver Canuck, former San Jose Shark. He was signed to a 1-year, one-way deal with the Florida Panthers. I'm pretty sure it was league minimum deal. Gadjevich, I would not be overly shocked if Gadjevich was a solid bomb 6'4" for the Panthers over the next little while. Like I said, the Panthers, they have some pretty good depth. Maybe not the best, but they could definitely use some more. So Gadjevich, I think, could definitely be a good solid 12-13 forward for the Panthers. Fantastic signing, in my opinion. Not a huge one. Gadjevich didn't get very much attention in training camp. He didn't get qualified by the Sharks with the UFA this offseason, so good to see he got finally an NHL contract. We'll be interested to see if he does wind up playing a couple games for the Panthers, or if he's placed on waivers and sent out to minors. So it'll be interesting to see. Speaking of waivers, that's all the signings we have to get to, but speaking of waivers, when we were talking about last video, Markus Niemelainen, who is a solid defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers, was on waivers. I said he would most likely clear. There was a chance he could possibly get claimed. He did indeed clear, so the defenseman in Edmonton's going to remain there. He's going to be sent out to Bakersfield. He already has been, so good to see that Niemelainen is cleared, and the Oilers still have him. If they have injury troubles, they can call him up, so really good news there. And then with Columbus having a guy in Matteo Olivier be activated off of injury reserve. They needed to clear a little bit of a roster spot to activate him, so they moved down Eric Robinson. Now, Robinson's a solid fourth line forward. I thought there was a lot of interest in him. He's a good solid fourth line forward, can kill penalties. He's really, really good. He can even play on the third line at some point. I thought there would be a couple of teams interested in him, but he does make a decent $1.6 million on the cap. So I'm not overly shocked that no one claimed him given his cap hits, but it was still a very good bomb six forward who can play in a lot of positions, help in the penalty kill, really, really good. He put around 5 to 10 goals, 20 to 25 points a year. I was thought that he would have been a very good guy to be claimed off of waivers, but he didn't. So he wound up clearing on Sunday morning, being sent down. That allowed the Jackets to activate Matteo Olivier, and that's that. So Robinson's now in the AHL, and he's going to have to wait for his next opportunity to get called up and play in the NHL. So going to be interesting to see, but I am quite surprised Robinson was not claimed. Not really surprised Niemelainen wasn't, but I am a little bit surprised Robinson was. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens for Robinson next. But he's right now buried in the minors. So that's the waiver update here. No real PTO updates either. We still have a handful of players who have not been either let go or signed their PTOs, who are still sort of in no man's land when it comes to an NHL contract. We do have a couple of injury updates here to talk about. Matteo Olivier, like I just said, he's been cleared to play, so he's back in the game action. Marcus Johansson has been cleared to play for the Minnesota Wild. He's back in action. The Edmonton Oilers' Dylan Holloway was cleared to play. He's back in game action, which is good to see. Andrew Cogliano in Colorado, he was cleared to play. He's good to go. He was back in action. So was Matthias Ekholm, who returned to game action as well. So that's good to see. You had Marco Vlasic have an undisclosed injury. He's going to be out for known period of time. Matthew Boldy has an upper body injury. He's going to be out week to week. That's really hard. He's a solid top six forward for the Wild, so to lose him for any period of time is horrible. Zach McEwen was cleared to play and will return back to the Ottawa Senators lineup. Steven Stamkos has a lower body injury and is out day-to-day for the Lightning. Thomas Nosek for the Devils has a lower body injury and he's out day-to-day for the Devils. Victor Arvidsson, who we said had an injury, missed the first little bit, was placed on long-term injury reserve for the Kings, is going to be out month to month with a back injury. That's awful news for the Kings. He's a fantastic middle six forward, so to lose him for any period of time is horrible, and for the next few months is even worse. So absolutely awful news for the Kings to lose Arvidsson for that stretch of time. Pavel Buchnevich has an upper body injury. He's going to be out for the next 2 weeks. It's not overly good news. Brandon Tanev has a lower body injury. I do wonder if this is connected to the hit he took in Game 1 against the Vegas Golden Knights. He's going to be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks due to a lower body injury. So that's awful news. So he's going to miss the next month. That's a big blow for the Seattle Kraken. Tanev's a really good bomb six forward. Scott Mayfield has a foot injury. He's out day-to-day right now. Sean Couturier has an undisclosed injury. He's going to be out for an undisclosed period of time. Not good news to see Couturier possibly banged up, especially with all of the injury history he has over the past couple of years. Marco Vlasic's injury was updated to day-to-day, so that's good news. Charlie Lindgren has an undisclosed injury in Washington. He's currently out day-to-day, so that's not overly good news there for Washington. And then both Taylor Hall, who were originally expected to be out a couple of weeks, and Ryan Lindgren, who suffered an injury on Saturday, were both able to be cleared to play enough for the game time on Monday. So interesting news there, but I am a little bit surprised Hall was back, but really bad news for guys like Tanev, Boldy, and Arvidsson to miss so much time. And Kirby Dach also. Dach has a leg injury, and there's some fear that it could be an injury that's going to last a couple of months. So these are all some pretty bad injury news for Montreal, Minnesota, LA, and Seattle. And hopefully these guys can come back and are not overly long for these injuries. So hopefully it's not overly long period of time, but hopefully these guys can come back and they're not out for a huge amount of the season. Going over to a couple of trade rumors here to finish up the video. First, the Vancouver Canucks. Elliot Freeman's talked about this a couple more times since we last talked about this, and he did say what we were all speculating and what he said before, that the Nashville Predators, Columbus Blue Jackets, and Winnipeg Jets, all three of them have some significant interest in Connor Garland. And he said he could be somewhere around possibly a dozen teams that do have some interest. But he said he knows that the Preds, the Jackets, and the Jets all do have interest. So we know the Canucks, he said in the Saturday night headlines on Hockey Night in Canada, he said that the Canucks in the trade for Connor Garland are looking to save about $1 to $2 million in cap space. So they may be willing to retain a little bit of money, but they want to save about $1 to $2 million in cap. And he says they want an NHL defenseman in return. To retain, like I said, possibly maybe $1 million to bump the cap it down to $4, maybe $3.75 million. That would be a trade I think they would be able to do. It would not be overly ideal for them to retain money for the next 3 years, but I think if it was to get them some cap flexibility, I think they would do it. The thing that these three teams have in common is they are really stacked with defensemen. We know the Jackets are trying to move a defenseman. They have Peak, Bean, Boqvist as the three guys who have been mentioned who are most likely going to be possibly traded. That still seems likely. I think Peak, maybe Boqvist are the more likely of the two. They've been healthy scratches at some points this season, so I think those two will be more likely ones. I know Peak seems like a very good possible partner for like a guy like Quinn Hughes, in my opinion. So yeah, I could definitely see the Jackets have interest. Peak makes it around $2.5 million, so that could be cap savings for the Canucks, and they could give the Jackets another forward. You could have the Nashville Predators, as I said in my last video, abundance of right shot defensemen in Barrie, Schenn, Fabro, and Carrier. I think there could definitely still be some interest for the Canucks in Fabro or Carrier. Fabro's an RFA. At the end of the year, Carrier's the UFA. Both make $2.5 million. They would get free cap savings and traded like that. So definitely, I think that would be a possibility. For the Winnipeg Jets, while they still have Hainel on injury reserve, they still have a buttload of NHL level defensemen. So definitely, I think there's a real likely possibility that the Jets could move one of those defensemen in order to acquire him. You got Logan Stanley. I wouldn't be surprised if they considered possibly trading Ville Heinola, but I think they really do like him. Dylan DeMello, who's in the final year of his deal. Brendan Dillon, who's in the final year of his deal. Maybe even a guy like Dylan Sandberg. I think there's a lot of guys on the Jets defense who they could possibly part with in order to help that middle six and get a guy like Connor Garland. So I'm not surprised at all that the Jets, Jackets, and Preds have interest in acquiring a guy like Garland, and I think it's just a matter of time until Garland is dealt. Now, it might not happen in the not too distant future. We don't usually see very many trades in late October, early November. It may happen maybe closer around to the roster freeze in December. I think that's a possibility. It might happen somewhere closer to a trade deadline. Not exactly sure when it'll happen, but it does sound like Garland will be traded at some point. It sounds like the Canucks wanted this trade to happen before the season starts, so they didn't have to start the season shorthanded. But they did start the season shorthanded, so they're still trying to find a trade for Garland, and it sounds like there's at least 3, if not possibly upwards of a dozen teams interested in acquiring Garland's services. And it seems like the Canucks in a trade want $1 million to $2 million in cap space and a defenseman in return. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I definitely think that there's a chance that Garland winds up getting dealt at some point here. Just a couple of quick possible things. I've not liked the start from the Seattle Kraken or the Florida Panthers for that matter. Panthers lost 2 games and almost blew their third one last night. The Kraken started with 3 straight losses. If those two teams aren't able to pick up the pace in the not-too-distant future, could these two teams be actually very interesting sellers at the deadline? I think it's quite possible. If you look at their pending UFAs for these two teams, the Kraken have 3 really interesting names in Jordan Eberle, Alex Wemberg, and Justin Schultz. If they were to be sellers at the deadline, if it doesn't look like they're making the playoffs, they would have assets to possibly move at the deadline. Same with Florida. If Florida winds up being on the outside looking at the deadline, they have Sam Reinhart, who would bring in a huge return if he was to be traded. Even though he's not healthy right now, they have Brandon Montour. I think they would rather sign him than trade him, but he could be a guy who winds up being on the move if they're not doing overly well. Gustav Forsling is another guy who's pending UFA right now on the defensive end. You also got some of their newcomers like Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dmitry Kuliakov, Mike Riley, as well as a couple of other bomb six forwards. So they're Panthers do have a lot of pending UFAs, especially on the defensive end. They could be an interesting team to watch out for if they're sellers at the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see. But after the starts from Florida, after the starts from Seattle, if they aren't able to come back and play better in the not-too-distant future, and they start really not doing overly well in the first 2 games, and they wind up being sellers closer to the deadline, I think there's a possibility they could be sellers, and they do have some interesting pending UFAs that we could be able to watch out for. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I would not be overly shocked if the Kraken or Panthers, if they're on the outside looking in, come around the trade deadline time, if they're still not playing overly well like they have been to start the year, I think those 2 teams could wind up being extremely interesting sellers at the deadline. So we're going to have to watch out for that there, but that's a little ways away, and the Kraken and Panthers can still turn their season around. So it's going to be interesting to see, but if they continue to play poorly, look for them to possibly be sellers at the deadline. And then lastly here, talking about the Ottawa Senators, Mateo Joseph has started out fantastically this year. He has, like, I think it was 2 or 3 goals to start the year, had 3 points, I think, in 3 games. He's an absolutely phenomenal playing, I think, with Greg and Tarasenko on the second line right now. There's a lot of talk from Sens fans that they do not want to trade Matthew Joseph anymore. He's too good of a player. He helps on the PK. He's a very speedy winger. He fits in that third line role. He can definitely work really well with the team. A lot of people now are shifting to them wanting to trade Dominic Kubalik instead. So if you look at this, Kubalik might actually be easier to trade anyway. Now, they acquired Kubalik in the DeBrincat trade. He's a really good goal scorer. He can put up 20 to 30 goals a year. He can put up 45 to 50 points a year. That's something that the Sens could use, yes. But if you look at where they would put him right now, with the way everything's going, once Norris and Pinto are back, Kubalik will probably be a third-line player. Is his skill set best suited on the third line? Probably not. He'll make $400,000 less than Joseph at $2.5 million. And on top of that, his contract's only expires this year. It's not for another couple of seasons. So trading Kubalik, who's a proven 20-goal scorer, who's definitely worth that contract, who has not looked overly bad in Ottawa and would definitely help a team's top 6, might be a ton more interesting to a team than to take on a $2.95 million Joseph, who's signed for the next couple of years, had lots of injury history last year, and a lot of people think is at least a little bit overpaid. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I definitely do see the reason why they might want to try and trade Kubalik instead of Joseph. I still think Branstrom's an option as well. It may not get them enough to sign Pinto, though, so Kubalik may be the most likely guy now to be moved. Like I said, it might be a lot easier to move Kubalik with his contract and his previous play than it might be to move Matthew Joseph. So it'll be interesting to see, but I definitely think that the Sens trade has to come soon. It sounds like there's not really much updates on Shane Pinto right now. They're hoping that Josh Norris is able to get to game action tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see, but we definitely have a lot of big news on the Senators that needs to happen, and it sounds like a trade needs to happen not just in future, and instead of Joseph, possibly it could be Kubalik. Definitely going to be interesting to see, but it sounds like Sens fans really like Joseph, would love him as a third line role, and it sounds like they would rather trade Kubalik instead of Joseph. So definitely going to be interesting to see. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. What do you think of the first week of the NHL season? We're now a week into it. What do you think of my stats? Is it really that dire for a team to start with 3 straight losses or under 500 record in the first 10 games? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. What do you think of the signings, the waiver updates, the injury updates? Do you see the Ottawa Senators moving Kubalik instead of Joseph? I think it's possible, especially with his contract. Do you see the Canucks moving Garland in the not-too-distant future? If so, what sort of a team do you think Garland would wind up going to? And what sort of a trade package do you think it would be for? And on top of that, do you see the Panthers and Kraken, if they continue to do poorly as they have to start the year, are they going to be sellers? And if they are sellers, what sort of pending UFAs do you think would be the most interesting for each of those teams? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. But that's all we want to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really like to, remember to subscribe down below. We're so close to 200 subscribers. I would never be able to do this without you, so don't forget to subscribe. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so definitely check that out. I'll have a link down in the description below. I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.